Okay, cool. Off you go.
Okay, great. So hi everyone. Welcome to Nash Talks again this week, our weekly webinar where we talk all things lockdown life related. We've had previous talks at this stage on how to build a better immune system. We had a physio speak to us about how to adapt our home workstations. Last week we had a very interesting talk on how to access tools to support mental health online. All of these are still available for you to download. But this week I am thrilled to say we have teacher. So for somebody who has an 11 and a 13-year-old at home, who I feel I'm doing my best in terms of homeschooling, but also working from home and husband working from home. So it can be a challenge. I'm just really interested in this as a touch point today. So Judy, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. We have Judy Wuest today. Judy has 25 years experience as a teacher in the USA and Germany, and an 8-year-old little boy at home, Lucas, who she's homeschooling. And Judy is also mom to our very own Katie Smith, who's running this program and is an all-around Harvey Nash superstar, wearing multiple hats during this crisis. So Judy, thank you again, and over to you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very honored, and I'm excited to share some of the tips that I have for you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my slides. And okay, I think that's working. So yes, as Sonia just said, I am a teacher. I'm working at a private school here in Hamburg, Germany, and I've been working as a teacher for over 25 years. Of course, this is the first time I've ever been a teacher during a pandemic. And just like all of you, I am learning as I go. But I would like to share some things from a teacher's perspective and from a parent's perspective that I've learned along the way. So when we use the term homeschooling, we are making it sound like we've had a choice in this situation. And the reality is there was no choice. We've all kind of been thrown into this situation, and the term that we have started using as teachers is crisis teaching. And as parents, I think that we need to think of that as well. This is a crisis situation, and there has not been a whole lot of choice in this, but we as parents have a lot of control, and we have a lot of choices that we can make on how we're going forward in educating our children at home at this point. Sometimes not having a choice can make us feel helpless, and it can also make our children feel helpless. Some of our children are exhibiting signs of stress, anxiety, and acting out. And I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there really wishing that schools would just open up again. So as I said, we are in a crisis situation. It's important to give ourselves a break sometimes, and to remember that every day is not going to be perfect. A lot of us have a partner working at home. We're working at home. We're trying to support our children and doing their schoolwork. And depending on the age of the child, they need more support than others. And it's okay sometimes to just step back and let them have a break, let them play in their room for a little while. If they really are against doing work during the first few hours of the day, or even a whole day, and just taking a day and maybe doing something else more fun at home, if your time schedule allows that. And it's also really important to just breathe. So helpful and not helpless. What are things that we can do as parents and to create some learning experiences at home that are also going to create memories? We can build those into our day. I have here first a few tips of how we can get control at home. One of those things is to try to set up a workspace for your child. If they have a desk in their room, or you have a special table that belongs just to them, they can keep their materials set up, everything that they need. And sometimes it's very helpful for them to have a clock or a timer so they know how much time they're going to be working And it's also helpful if this space is free of distractions, meaning no television nearby, probably free of toys or things that are going to pull away their attention. And it's really important as a family to sit down and to create some kind of a weekly schedule and try to stick with it. I've listed a couple of things here that are important to include on that schedule. And I think two of the biggest things that we need to include in our daily schedule is a sort of an end time to our work day, an end time as a family where we're all going to stop. We don't have that time anymore that everybody's coming home from work and you're home and you're relaxing. You're always working and you're always home. And it's important to say, okay, today is 6 o'clock, everything is going off. We're coming together as a family. We're going to eat a meal together. We're going to play a game together. We're going to go for a walk together. And I've listed here about games. And I think that playing games together as a family is something very educational, and children don't even realize that they're learning. And it's also a good opportunity to step away from the computer, step away from our cell phones, step away from technology, and just sit together and play a board game. It teaches skills such as decision-making, math, language skills are all developed, and games are a really good way to get started into learning at home and having some fun. And also uninterrupted time just with a family. Other ways that you can create learning at home, and the number one recommendation that I make to my families at school is reading. Right now, when we're in a situation where we're not able to travel anymore for a while, we can still go places with books. And if children are able to sit down with a good book, it's a good escape for them. They can have friends through characters and stories and things like that. And I think if it's important that we share our enthusiasm. If we're readers, our children are most likely going to be readers. One way that we can get into doing that is to share our favorite book from our childhood. If you don't have a copy of that book, I have done a little bit later on the list to use a Kindle or an e-reader to be able to order new books. Maybe you can even find some of those old classics that you read when you were a child. A fun way to motivate your children is to create a reading chart, and the whole family can take part in this. You could even set up a challenge as a family that 1 page equals 1 kilometer, and you can see how far your family has gone during this whole crisis. Something that I like to do in my classroom, and I suggest it for families as well in the evening, it's called DEAR, and that stands for Drop Everything and Read. In school, I usually would ring a bell, and when the children hear that bell, they know it's time to stop doing whatever it is that we're doing, pick up a book, and stop where you are and just read, sometimes just for 15 minutes, sometimes longer if everybody's really into it. But that's something fun that a family can do together. You could start a kid book club with some friends, and you could meet on Zoom and talk about books that you're reading together. And you could try to set up a space in the house where you all come together. And one other idea for motivating might be to pick a popular book that you know has been made into a movie and set it as a goal that when the book is finished, you could watch the movie together as a family and have a movie night, and then look for the differences between the book and the movie. Some ways that you can engage your children while they're reading. There are some basic comprehension questions that are fitting for any book, and I've listed them here. You can have them describe the story, ask about the conflicts, the problems, the characters, and if you get to know the characters, you can talk to your children about those characters, and you can ask them almost every day what's going on in the story, and they'll probably be very happy to tell you about it. You could ask them to recreate the setting with toys. They could draw it. When they're finished, you could ask them if they want to write an alternative ending or a sequel, or even just tell you an alternative ending. How do they wish the story had ended? Or they could put on a puppet show. You could create a play together. There's lots of fun ways to engage your child in reading. On to math. I teach math presently for 1st and 2nd graders, and I have a 2nd grader here at home, a 2nd class. He's 8 years old. But these are things that you could do all the way up to 4th grade, 5th grade. Right now, we're on the theme of telling time, teaching how to use a clock. Something fun that you can do as a family is to create a family schedule, and then your child can keep track during the day by looking at the clock and telling everybody what time they need to be doing the different things. Talk about minutes, hours, days, months, etc. For younger children, they might enjoy making a store that they have at home. They could go through some of their toys, put price tags on it, and the parents can go through in the evening and buy some of their things just to practice using money, or the parents could create the store and the children could use some money and pretend to be purchasing those things, or even groceries, put price tags on them and things like that. Those are just fun ways to practice. Geometry, they can use Legos. One of the activities that I have been using for 1st and 2nd grade is I give them a challenge to try to build a different shape just using 100 Legos. And then they can describe their shape. So you can talk about 2D shapes, 3D shapes. What usually ends up happening with these activities is the children become immersed into the activity, and they forget that they're learning, and they actually keep themselves quite busy for a while building a lot of things even beyond this. So they don't know that they're learning, they're just having fun. Some things that you might have at home that you can use are muffin tins or egg cartons, and you can practice dividing, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and it is a lot more fun because it's hands-on. So if they're covering those topics in school and they're doing worksheets, honestly, worksheets can get a bit boring, but doing these hands-on things at home, it shows that they've actually learned the different tasks, and they're showing you they're learning by doing it. My favorite thing is baking and cooking. My son is becoming a little chef with me. We try to find recipes that we can work on together. Some of them are easier, some of them are harder. But with recipes and cooking, they're practicing their language skills. They're learning how to read. They're learning fractions. They're learning measurements. And they're very proud of the end result. Plus, the best part is they can eat it. So that gets them quite motivated. Some fun examples, you could create your own cafe at home, and your children could create a menu. Of course, this is going to be for the children who are a little bit more independent, but they could create a menu, and they could even serve you a special dinner, since we're not going to restaurants at the moment, things like this. Just fun ways that you can tie learning into every day. For writing, I have sent on this lockdown journal in a PDF. At the end of the talk, you'll be able to download it if you like. I'm using it with my students. It's set up kind of like a comic book, but it has a different heading and a different theme on each page, and it gives the chance for children to write down their ideas, their fears, their emotions, their thoughts. Just trying to keep track from one day to another when it seems right now that the days are all kind of running into each other. And it will be something I think that will be very interesting 5 to 10, even 20 years from now, for children to look back and see what they wrote about during this historical event. Right now, the recommendations is to avoid spending time with grandparents, which might be very difficult for grandparents and children. So I recommend writing letters and sending them the old-fashioned way through a mail rather than digitally. I recommend this because the experience of writing a letter is a very good learning experience, and it's also very rewarding for the recipients to receive mail. It might be the most exciting thing that happens that day is the child gets a letter in the post. So this is something that I like to do and recommend. For my 1st through 4th graders, I've offered this, and for my own child here at home, you can take just some regular pieces of paper and attach them, and they can write a comic book. And the superhero can be the superhero that's getting rid of the coronavirus, or how they're fighting or staying alive. It's something very silly and basic, but for children, it might help them feel like they have some power over the situation, and it might give them a chance to express how they're really feeling. And it's something you could even do as a family. You could create different characters together and work on this together. So those are some ways for writing. Of course, the sports teachers are all telling us that we need to exercise every day. And I'm going to add on to that some things that you can do outside independently. Children can go, if they're able to go into a garden, sometimes they need you to go with them, but jumping rope, going for a walk, sidewalk chalk is really fun because they can practice writing spelling words, or they can practice writing numbers and hopscotch. I have a math teacher in the neighborhood, and she's been putting math problems on the sidewalk for kids to do as they're walking by. Things like a family jog, family walk, or a family scavenger hunt where you're practicing reading street signs or looking for signs of spring if you're talking about the different seasons. There's all kinds of ways to tie it in. And the fresh air and the sunshine help us all to feel better during this time. I think one of the most important things to remember is that kids are very social. This is just like we are, and they're missing their friends. If they're not having set times online with their classmates, as some schools are doing, we as parents can set up virtual play dates. The virtual play date can be very loose, or it could have a theme. Perhaps you've talked ahead of time, and they're going to have their favorite Pokemon cards set up, and they can compare their cards over the phone, or they can build a Lego tower and see who can build the highest tower. Anything that feels like they're engaging with another child, because right now it's very isolating for children. Setting up regular calls with grandparents or family members, and just having a contact where they're staying connected. I think the most important thing is to talk and make plans for the future. For children, they need to know that there is an end in sight. They need to talk about things they're going to do when this is over, and they need to hear from us that there is a future, because their whole world just kind of stopped one day, and a lot of children might not understand exactly what's going on. I had a student already ask me if we'll ever go back to school again. So it's really important that we let them know. And as parents, it's important for us to give our children a few minutes each day to talk about how they're feeling. This might be just at bedtime when they're having a quiet time. It might be first thing in the morning, but that we're just listening and being really present for them so that we understand how they're feeling. So I have a couple of books here. These are my favorites. These are the books that I'm recommending for different age levels, starting with age 5 in the first class, going up to about age 10, 11 in the 4th class. Most of them are series. Some of them may sound a little bit silly, like the Captain Underpants books and the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. For me, as a specialist with children's literature, I can tell you for sure there is no such thing as a silly book. Anytime that children are reading, it's important. It's not silly if it motivates them. So I recommend these stories, and these are the books that I'm presently using at school and I'm presently using with my child. So I have another list that I can share at the end. So that's all that I have. And if you have any questions or questions, I would be happy to answer them.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Judy. One, to hear that we're doing some things right, but two, got some really great takeaways. I didn't see all the cooking that was going on with his dad as a learning, so that's in a whole new category now. We have the most fattening chocolate slice here that we're trying to get through in the past few days, but there's been a lot of that going on. The journal idea, I think, is absolutely lovely, and I think it would be just a wonderful thing for them to have, for all of us to have in a couple of years. So, and I have one that hesitates reading, and he says, oh, but I love writing. So right back at you, get your journal out. Also guilty of calling those books the silly books, because I thought they should be reading, you know, Enid Blyton or all of these books that I read. But I did have somebody say any reading is good reading if it engages them. Writing a letter to the grandparents. I mean, I have two that are quite isolated now at this point and really missing us. And we are talking to them a lot, but I'd say if they got a letter in the door, it would mean the world. So lovely takeaway. Just a question, also, sorry, love that you call it crisis teaching, and that this isn't by choice and we can all do our best and we should give ourselves a break. Have you a view on how many hours a day should be committed to schoolwork? I have one son who decided to pack all of his 5 days into 3 and then tell me that he had last Thursday and Friday off. And I didn't know whether that was a good thing or not. I kind of think probably having a certain amount of time each day. So just from my perspective, 10, 11, and maybe 12, 13, what would be appropriate?
That's a really good question. And actually, I'm basing my recommendation upon Germany's school board recommendation that came out to the city of Hamburg, and I think most of the country as well. And that is that we are saying 90 minutes of concentrated learning.
Okay.
So that means perhaps 2 45-minute sessions, so choosing 2 subjects for that day, or 3 30-minute sessions with a small break in between, but concentrated learning and not more, because the reality is when children are at school, most of their learning is not taking place by sitting and just writing and filling out papers. Most of their learning is taking place interactively and with other students and moving and lunchtime and breaks and things like this. So yeah, we say 90 minutes per day concentrated.
Okay, that's great to know. Another question that has popped up, and you just might have advice on this just from a teacher's perspective, is how to talk to them about what's happening in the world. Do you have any advice around that?
Yeah, that is another really good question. I always have felt as a teacher and as a mom to go on, honesty is the best policy. Of course, according to the age of the child, we want to be careful not to scare them or to cause them a lot of anxiety or things like this. But I think it's really important. Some of the public television stations might have some kind of special shows or something like that that they could watch, or children's news that might break it down more easily for them. But I think facts, giving them actual facts, even teaching them a little bit of science along with the news and explaining why this is happening and how it works and how our bodies work, and giving them real information. I think that's the best way to handle it.
So just go there, use it as an educational thing. Don't hide from the truth. The more they understand, the more comfortable they are. Okay, that's really interesting. How involved should we be in that 90 minutes, from letting them figure it out themselves to sort of sitting with them and doing it?
Again, this is dependent upon the age of the child. Of course, first graders, they really do need our support. And it depends upon the teacher as well. Trying to set up tasks that can be done independently should be the goal. That's what I strive to do. It also depends on what type of a learner the child is and how much support they generally need. If they're a child in school that needs a lot of support, then at home they're still going to need a lot of support. So there's different kinds of learners, and you have to consider all of that. But we as teachers want to see the work that the children have done. We want to see what they've been capable of. If we're getting back perfect work every time, and it's not a student who's usually producing perfect work, then we are a little bit suspicious. But we also are understanding that they might be having somebody sitting next to them, where in school they're trying to do it independently. So I think encouraging them to do as much as they can before they become frustrated and still staying motivated is the goal. And then, of course, third class, fourth class, when they're getting a little bit older, it should be almost completely independent. As a parent, you can go back over the work with them and see, okay, did you miss anything? Is there something you could add? Giving them some tips before it's turned in. But I think a lot of it should be their work if possible.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. I think we've time for one final question. Ask, please, how to balance between reading, writing, math, and art for a 5-year-old. Oh, and playtime. So reading, writing, math, art, and playtime for a 5-year-old.
That is definitely challenging, but I can say that it can be quite fun. I'd like to do something that I call kid writing, and I started doing it in first grade. Actually, you can do it with kindergartners, so 5-year-olds, where they can have perhaps half of a page for writing and half of a page for drawing. So the drawing page, the drawing part of the page can be the art. And I usually say, depending on their attention levels and things like that, you have 15 minutes to draw a picture. You might give them a topic or a theme. And now you have 15 minutes to start writing about this picture. And then they do kid writing, where they're just sounding out the sounds of the letters, writing them the best they can, and then you go back over it with them as an adult and you write the correct spelling underneath what they've written so they can still see how close they were to forming the words. So that would incorporate reading, writing, art into that, because you're going to read it back with them correctly. So what was the other thing that was asked about? It was reading, writing, art.
Reading, writing, math,
and
art,
math.
and playtime.
And playtime. Well, math can be part of playtime for sure, because you could, you can sort shapes. You can use something as basic as a deck of playing cards, and you can play memory with numbers so that they're just saying the numbers and they're finding a match. And they can do that. That's something they can do by themselves, actually. They could play memory. They could identify shapes as part of math. So it just depends on, I guess, on how much time and how much support you have. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's about it from a time perspective. So just once again, a huge thank you for us. I certainly learned a lot from a reassured perspective and a new ideas perspective. So that was really helpful. And
you're all doing a great job. If you're here and your kids are okay at the end of the day, you're doing a fabulous job.
Great.
So
great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to know. Okay. Thanks everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.